When a royal grandchild is born, the name arrives before the child does. It's the first inheritance, handed over in the register before anyone knows what kind of person will carry it. Lady Sarah Chatto carried the weight of that name her whole life. The daughter of Princess Margaret, the niece of Queen Elizabeth II, a woman the press hunted until she gave them nothing to hunt. And when she had sons of her own, she did something the family had every right to expect she wouldn't. She let the name stop. Samuel was born in 1996, Arthur in 1999. They are Chattos. As adults, in every public record, on every list, at every royal occasion, neither of them has ever once used the surname Windsor. They didn't refuse it in a press release. There was no statement, no rupture, no drama. The name simply wasn't used, year after year, until its absence became the most eloquent thing about them. And the family, the same family that had spent decades deciding who its members were allowed to be, said nothing. Because by then they understood what Sarah had understood first. The name was never the inheritance, the behavior was, and behavior can be declined. To understand what wasn't used, you have to understand what was available. On July 17, 1917, King George V issued a royal proclamation changing his house name from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to Windsor. Anti-German sentiment was at its height, the Kaiser was his cousin, and the old surname was killing him in the British press. The proclamation assigned the Windsor name to all the descendants in the male line of Queen Victoria. Female descendants who married were explicitly excluded. That exemption wasn't a loophole. It was the system working as designed. Princess Margaret was the daughter of George VI, Elizabeth II's sister, not her daughter, not her male line descendant. When Margaret married the society photographer Anthony Armstrong Jones in 1960, her children took his name. Lady Sarah was born Armstrong Jones, not Windsor. That was never incidental. Then, in 1960, Elizabeth II issued a separate declaration through the Privy Council creating the Mountbatten-Windsor surname for her own descendants who would need a civil surname, specifically applying to my descendants, not her sister's descendants. Margaret's children and their children were outside that declaration entirely. Samuel and Arthur Chatto, born to Sarah in 1996 and 1999, are grandsons of Princess Margaret and great-nephews of Elizabeth II. No royal instrument ever assigned them Windsor or Mountbatten-Windsor. Their default civil surname was always Chatto, their father's name, by ordinary convention. What was available to them wasn't a legal entitlement. It was something subtler, the dynastic, cultural inheritance of the House of Windsor, the kind that doesn't come with a certificate, only with a choice. That distinction matters. The name was on the table the way it's on the table for any member of that family who wants it. They could have used it. Plenty in adjacent positions have reached for something similar. The Chatto sons haven't. That is the choice. And because it was never legally required in either direction, it's also entirely voluntary, which means it speaks more clearly, not less. Sarah's own refusal came in layers. The first was the simplest. She married Daniel Chatto on July 14, 1994, and took his name. The wedding was held at St. Stephen Walbrook in the City of London, a Christopher Wren church that seated 200 people. Her brother David had married at Westminster Abbey the previous year. Sarah chose the smaller venue, the shorter ceremony. The Reverend Chad Varah, founder of the Samaritans, officiated. The Queen attended. The Queen Mother attended. The ceremony lasted 30 minutes. Then it was over, and Lady Sarah Armstrong Jones became Lady Sarah Chatto, and within months the cameras began losing interest.
She had done the same arithmetic as her mother, watched what being publicly visible cost, and concluded the sum didn't add up. Since 1995, she has exhibited her paintings at the Red Fern Gallery in London under the name Sarah Armstrong Jones, not Lady Sarah, not Chatto. Her birth name, the one from her father's side, the one that predates both her marriage and her mother's dynasty. The gallery doesn't call her Lady. On the wall, the name is Sarah Armstrong Jones. Patrick Kinmonth, writing about her work, described the paintings as growing like plants flowering, or landscapes excavated over time. Over 3/4 of works in her most recent solo show sold. In 2025, Majesty magazine referenced her as Sarah Armstrong Jones, aka Lady Sarah Chatto, that aka quietly acknowledging what she's always understood. The two names aren't competing identities, they're navigational tools. She brings the title to royal events and the birth name to the gallery, and she has been doing this for 30 years without feeling the need to explain it. Daniel Chatto's surname has its own quiet history. His birth name was Daniel Chatto St. George Sproul. The Chatto came from his mother, Roz Chatto, who was a theatrical agent, and his father, Tom Chatto, an actor. The name wasn't aristocratic, it was professional, inherited from the working side of the entertainment world. IMDb lists Daniel for Quartet in 1981, Little Dorrit in 1987. The trivia section notes that in a 1982 production, Charles and Diana, A Royal Love Story, he was cast as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, his future wife's cousin. The name he gave his wife, the one that superseded all the others in the family register, was in origin a stage name. There is something characteristically understated about that fact. Sarah Armstrong Jones, daughter of Princess Margaret, took the professional name of an actor's theatrical family, and then she put that name on her sons. Samuel David Benedict Chatto was born on July 28, 1996. He attended Eton, studied history of art at the University of Edinburgh, and completed yoga teacher training in India in 2019. He has a home studio and has sold ceramic work. In 2023, he announced an exhibition with a gallery in Kyoto following a residency in Japan. On Instagram, he is @Sam Chatto, not @Sam Windsor, Sam Chatto. When he attends royal events, every agency caption says the same thing. Getty Images has 112 photographs of him. At the coronation of King Charles III on May 6, 2023, Getty's official caption read, "Lady Sarah Chatto, Daniel Chatto, and Samuel Chatto arrived to take their seats ahead of the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla at Westminster Abbey." At the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II on September 19, 2022, Lady Sarah Chatto, Daniel Chatto, Arthur Chatto, and Samuel Chatto arrive at Westminster Abbey. At the Duke of Edinburgh's memorial service on March 29, 2022, Samuel and Arthur Chatto attend the memorial service for the Duke of Edinburgh at Westminster Abbey. At the National Service of Thanksgiving in Edinburgh on September 12, 2022, Arthur Chatto and Samuel Chatto attend the National Service of Thanksgiving at St. Giles Cathedral. Town and Country identifies him as Princess Margaret's grandson, Samuel Sam Chatto. The New York Post, Princess Margaret's grandson, Samuel Chatto. Facebook community pages describe him as Mr. Samuel Chatto. Not a prince, not a lord, Mr. The plainest possible honorific at the funeral of the Queen in the seat reserved for family, Mr. Samuel Chatto. He makes pots, he does yoga. His great-aunt was Queen of the United Kingdom and 14 other realms. On his Instagram, he announces kiln exhibitions in Japan. The name on the gallery, Sam Chatto. Arthur Robert Nathaniel Chatto was born on February 5, 1999. He served as Page of Honor to Queen Elizabeth II from 2009 to 2015. 6 years standing beside her at state occasions, in the gold-trimmed uniform, identified in every photograph as Arthur Chatto. He studied geography at Edinburgh, worked as a personal trainer, and in the summer of 2020 rode 2,000 miles around the coast of Britain with 3 friends in 38 days. In September 2021, he was accepted onto the Royal Marines Officer Training Course, a demanding 32-week program that Prince Edward had begun over 30 years earlier and left a third of the way through. Arthur finished it. By 2022, he held the rank of lieutenant. When he walked into the National Service of Thanksgiving at St. Paul's Cathedral on June 3, 2022, in his Royal Marines dress uniform,
Social media responded in the way it responds to the unexpected. Arthur Chatto in uniform. Arthur Chatto, grandson of Princess Margaret. Arthur Chatto, first member of the extended royal family to complete the commando course. The Royal Marines, an institution founded in 1664, recorded his commission under his name. Not Windsor, not Armstrong Jones, Lieutenant Arthur Chatto. The most demanding military qualification in the British Armed Forces carries the same surname as his grandmother's theatrical agent. Getty Images has a dedicated archive for Arthur Chatto, 94 photographs. Every caption is the same. Arthur Chatto at St. Paul's. Arthur Chatto at Westminster Abbey. Arthur Chatto in uniform, at memorials, at services, in formal dress, in royal family photographs that have been reproduced around the world. He also deleted his personal Instagram account in 2017 after fitness photographs went viral and the tabloids dubbed him the new royal bachelor. He retreated from it. The account vanished. That decision mirrors his mother's press retreat after 1994 with a precision that reads less like coincidence and more like family temperament. Reduce the surface area, become harder to photograph, make yourself less available than the story wants you to be. Some viewers of the previous video about Lady Sarah have noted a contrast worth naming as exactly what it is: an observation audiences make, not a verdict. Beatrice and Eugenie are the same generation, the same general distance from the throne, the same products of the post-Diana royal landscape. People magazine confirmed in late 2025 that both princesses retain their titles and HRH styling as daughters of a son of the late Queen, in accordance with George V's letters patent of 1917. That entitlement holds. What audiences observe isn't about entitlement, it's about the degree to which royal identity functions as a professional and public framework. Samuel Chatto has a ceramics studio. Arthur Chatto completed the Royal Marines Commando course. They appear at the family's occasions and then return to lives that don't require the Windsor name to function. That audiences notice this and draw a particular conclusion is real. It deserves to be named. But it's their observation, not a verdict being handed down here. The obvious question, of course, is why no one in the family ever said anything. Part of the answer is structural. The naming conventions were never meant to reach Princess Margaret's line. No royal instrument assigned Windsor to her children or grandchildren, so there was no instrument to enforce and no formal departure from it. The household was never going to issue a directive about names for people outside the directive's scope. But the more honest answer is contextual, and Anne Glenconner described it without knowing that was what she was doing. Glenconner served as Princess Margaret's lady-in-waiting for decades, and her memoir, Lady-in-Waiting, published by Hodder and Stoughton in 2019, became a New York Times bestseller. The household she portrayed in those pages, the volatility, the constraints, the quiet cost of living in perpetual service to someone who was herself perpetually surplus to requirements, was the world Sarah Armstrong Jones grew up inside of. Glenconner watched Margaret's children come up through it. She understood that the rules of that world were selectively enforced and selectively abandoned, depending on what the institution had the energy to defend. By the mid to late 1990s, the institution had very little energy to spare. The 1992 Annus Horribilis had included the Windsor Castle fire, the separation of Charles and Diana, and the separation of Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. Diana's 1995 Panorama interview, Prince Charles's public admission of infidelity, and then Diana's death in August 1997, followed by acute public criticism of the palace's cold initial response. These weren't abstract reputational difficulties. They were existential tests for an institution that had to simultaneously mourn, modernize, and survive. A household managing all of that, wasn't going to spend political capital on whether the two sons of Princess Margaret's quiet daughter were using an ordinary surname. Sarah had done the work of invisibility first. She had chosen a 200-person church over Westminster Abbey. She had put her birth name on gallery walls. She had made herself so consistently, deliberately uncontroversial that there was nothing for the institution to push against. The absence of any recorded objection to the Chatto boys' surname, no statement, no press release, no named royal source in 30 years of coverage, is itself a documented fact. It accumulated year by year, one Chatto caption at a time, until the non-use became its own established convention and the silence became indistinguishable from permission. The proof of all this isn't philosophical. It's a list of captions. September 19, 2022. Westminster Abbey. State Funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. The caption: Arthur Chatto and Samuel Chatto. May 6, 2023. Westminster Abbey. Coronation of King Charles III. The caption: Samuel Chatto. June 3, 2022. St. Paul's Cathedral, Platinum Jubilee Service. The caption: Arthur Chatto. December 2023. Westminster Abbey, Together at Christmas Carol Service. The caption: Samuel Chatto. June 25, 2024. Buckingham Palace, State Banquet for Emperor Naruhito of Japan. The caption: Samuel Chatto. The surname does not change across venues, years, occasions, or editors. It doesn't change between formal state occasions and informal family lunches at Buckingham Palace. It doesn't change when Arthur is in uniform. It doesn't change at royal weddings. It's the same name every time, until it stops being a story about a choice and simply becomes a description of who these two men are. Samuel is a ceramic artist in West Sussex. Arthur completed the Royal Marines Commando course and held the rank of lieutenant. They appear where they're expected to appear, at memorials, coronations, Thanksgiving services, family occasions, and they do so under an ordinary surname that connects them to their father's theatrical family and to nothing grander than that. Sarah refused the chair for herself. That was the story of her public life. The deliberate smallness, the gallery under her birth name, the 30-minute wedding in a Wren church. But then she did something quieter and larger. She raised two sons who never carried the Windsor name at all. They walk through the same royal occasions their cousins attend, sit in the seats reserved for family, and they do it under a surname that asks nothing of anyone. There was no announcement, there never is, with this family's real decisions. The name simply stopped. And the household that once decided everything about who its members could be looked at the two of them and, for once, said nothing at all. If you'd like more stories like this one, subscribe.